Welcome to Living a Full Life podcast. Join us as we explore health topics that encourage raising healthy children, living a healthy life, and living the best life possible. Now, here's your host.
Hey everyone, welcome to another podcast of Living a Full Life. We got a really special guest this week. We're going to be talking more about sleep. Dr. Richard Downs, thanks for being with us. He's a retired dentist, an author, and he's developing a book right now, and he works with the American Sleep and Breathing Academy. That's great. He's got his diplomat in it, actually, from the American Sleep and Breathing Academy. So this is going to be exciting about sleep. Thanks for being here. Tell us a little bit about you. How did you get into all this as a dentist?
Well, about 15, actually more closer to 18 years ago, I was practicing and I saw a course advertised on dental sleep medicine. So I went to that course, and while I was there, I got tested and discovered that I had obstructive sleep apnea. Now, obstructive sleep apnea is where your tissues close down and you actually have an obstruction to taking a breath. And this happens when you're sleeping. And most people recognize it or don't recognize it, but should be recognizing the fact that when they snore, that's actually a sleep obstruction. So I found out that I had that. I was surprised because I just thought snoring was normal, like a lot of people do. And then I discovered that I had a fairly significant obstruction and that it was affecting my health. And I thought, my goodness, we could do more about this than I thought we could do. Dentists are actively providing therapy for that kind of treatment other than CPAPs. And so I wanted to get involved, and I began learning about it from that point on. So anyway, now I've gotten to the point where I'm teaching others, and not only dentists, but other health practitioners, allied healthcare providers. And I started about 4 years ago trying to involve chiropractic medicine into sleep medicine because I felt that it was an untapped resource that could pair up with other allied health professionals. There's just not enough sleep specialists in the world to take care of the need. And there's probably 75 million people walking around undiagnosed in America with sleep apnea right now.
Wow. Yeah, that's how you and I crossed paths was when you tried to talk to some chiropractors, and you got my interest and my attention. Yeah. And as a provider, we ask more questions now about that and help guide patients that way too, which is great. So where are you now with what you found out with apnea? I mean, not just apnea, but any sleeping issues. What's the best way to follow up for people? I mean, it seems like it's always the same thing. They go get diagnosed with sleep apnea, they're put on a CPAP, and that's the end of the road as far as medicine goes.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and I thank you for asking that question, Doctor. There is more than 100 sleep disorders. And the list is growing. But the vast majority of those people with sleep disorders, probably 96, 97%, maybe even more, are obstructive. In other words, so when I talk about treating and helping with sleep disorders, I'm talking about the obstructive form. When you have other disorders that are not obstructive, then dentists and chiropractors don't necessarily wish to be involved, nor should we, because many of those require CPAP use. Now, you talked about CPAP, and it's kind of ubiquitous in this country. We've by far, as a country in the world, prescribed more CPAPs than any other country. In Europe, actually, oral sleep appliances that dentists make are actually more prevalent and more used than CPAPs are. And that's the way it should be. CPAPs generally have a dismal compliance record. In other words, people who have them don't wear them. 50% don't wear them. And of the 50% that do wear them, their definition of success is that they get 4 hours of sleep on the CPAP per night, or 17 days per month. So that's a dismal standard. That's a very low standard. In my opinion, it's not. So when you're talking about 50%, you're looking at a kind of a skewed optimistic figure, because it's really lower than that. It's pretty bad. And some people do really great with CPAPs. Don't get me wrong. CPAPs really work well for those people that can tolerate them. But unfortunately, the vast majority cannot, who do start wearing it. So that's why we're doing other alternatives, and we have a lot of them now. Matter of fact, the medical professional that I work with, we've introduced 2 new devices in the U.S. One is the ExciteOSA tongue stimulator, which chiropractors can easily implement, and also the iNAP, which is the negative pressure device, and that's what this is, the negative pressure device. And it is very quiet. As a matter of fact, if I turn it on, you'll see the light is flashing. And it's actually got a motor running right now. Can you hear it?
I cannot.
No, it's really, really quiet. And then this little interface goes in the mouth, and a little shield goes under your lips.
Easily wearable.
It's easily to wear, and what it does is it has a suction, and it brings the tongue up, forward, and into the roof of your mouth where the tongue is supposed to be. Right. And it also pulls the soft palate forward. So what it does is, by moving the tongue forward and up and the soft palate forward, it opens up the airway in the back so that you can breathe more freely. Great. The problem is, when we lay down in bed, we usually lay on our back or on our side, but the muscles in the neck and the tongue falls back into the throat. And then you begin to have choking episodes. These muscles stay tense and tensed open while you're awake. But when you're asleep, they relax. And the older you get, the worse it is. So by having this device, you could actually do the thing that the tongue tension and the muscles tensions in the roof of the mouth used to do when you were awake. Keep that airway open. Now, if you have something other obstructing you, like, for instance, if you can't breathe through your nose, this device is not going to work. You have to have something that opens the nose. And many of us have constricted noses like mine and narrow faces like mine. And this is because of our modern lifestyle. We are actually having shrinking faces, and airways are becoming more obstructed for modern people than ancient people used to have. We do not chew solid foods anymore. We blend it up in blenders and suck it down. No chewing. We have tended, and hopefully they're changing that now, to bottle feeding for children, pacifiers, which cause constricted airways and constricted arches. We have chronically crooked teeth, and orthodontists are always busy because of the way our faces have shrunk. And oral surgeons are taking out wisdom teeth almost ubiquitously on everybody because we don't have enough room for all our teeth. That is not a vestigial organ. Your wisdom teeth should be coming in and functioning on every human being.
Yes.
It's horrible what's happening to us. And that's what I'm writing the book about, Doctor.
That's interesting.
The book is entitled Beautiful Faces, and it talks about the architects of enhanced attractiveness and improved human breathing. That's the name of the book. And it's about how to fix our shrunken faces like mine, and what's going on, how to recognize it. We are actually becoming so used to seeing faces that are shrunk and narrow that we actually are changing our views of beauty, and it's a mistake. It's an absolute mistake.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yes. As an anthropology minor myself, I remember going through all this, wondering what's the big change. We just don't work hard anymore. We don't climb the trees. We don't get those fibrous fruits anymore. We don't have to sit there and chew for half an hour to get through the pellet of a vegetable or something. So yeah, no, it makes sense. That's amazing. I'm going to definitely read that book. So with parents now, when you were talking, it was like, how do we help our kids, one, and ourselves, two? But children, I mean, are tough. Our middle one, we had to do a lot of this myofunctional work with her jaw and her palate to get it to open up, because she has the most narrowest face out of all three of them. And but that structure changes function. So her function is very different compared to me and my eldest, who have the wider jaw. And I've got all my teeth. I've never had anything pulled. I've never even had a cavity. So, and no braces. Thanks, Daddy. So that's great. So that's amazing, but that's genetic. So we need to pass on those genetics. Yeah. So how do we start with kids? How do we help them? That device is the one that's quiet. It fits under the tongue. I think that's even great for pediatrics, but I think getting assessed first is the key.
Absolutely. We can't do anything until, and that's such an important thing. We have people out there doing all kinds of things without a diagnosis. So you need to have a diagnosis first. I mean, just throwing treatments at things without knowing what you're doing and what the actual diagnosis is wrong. And so as a doctor, you know that if we don't diagnose first, we're really committing malpractice by instituting treatments that may not necessarily fit the diagnosis. So, and what can children do? Well, parents could start by, one of the biggest problems is eliminating sugar and refined carbohydrates from the diet. It is absolutely devastating what we've done to our diets. Get back to foods that have to be chewed. Let your children who are tiny chew on a carrot, for crying out loud. And then these pacifiers, as you use them, they actually cause a narrowing of the arch. So you think a pacifier might, even the ones that are supposedly shaped like a nipple, are not doing the job that they should be doing. We have to get back to breastfeeding our children, real breastfeeding. And we need to also get back to proper diets that people have to chew and actually work at. Matter of fact, when a baby nurses on a breast, they're actually chewing. It's not sucking, it's chewing. And what that does is it broadens the arches and opens up a larger dental arch, gives more room for your tongue so they can stay forward. But it does more than that, but we don't want to go into all that.
No, we know.
We're ending up with a lot of tongue ties now, and tongue ties need to be checked for on children. And you'll have pediatricians say, well, tongue ties are being released as being overdone. I saw there was a New York Times article, something on that. That is not right. They think that the only time you do a tongue tie release is for breastfeeding. That's not true. It's also extremely important for forward jaw position, forward head position. That fascia under the tongue is attached to the fascia throughout your body, and it'll actually change your posture if you have it properly adjusted and released. And also, it changes the way your mouth develops. So your airway is actually developed as you get older. There's much more to tongue tie release than just breastfeeding, because some children who have tongue ties can breastfeed just fine. It doesn't mean they're not a candidate for a tongue tie release. Okay.
Correct. Yeah, I think that's just the first emergency situation is when the baby stops breastfeeding. So automatically their tongue tie is released or their lip tie. But you're right. I've had adults recently in their 40s and 50s get their tongue ties released because of them learning about the fascial connection to the midline of the body. So we're opening up a whole can here in the podcast. But This is really important stuff. So for our kids, that's infancy. And then when they start eating solids, like get them to chew on this stuff. Give them a hunk of beef. Give them a hunk of, chew through this thing. Make those work. And then for adults, getting assessed properly for your sleep. So going through a sleep study is probably a good idea.
Yeah, here's what we do with that. And I'm so glad you brought that up, Dr. Dolce. How do you see your last name, Dr.
Dulcicor is the easiest way.
Dulcicor. So I apologize because I'm terrible. I have a a reading disability. I grew up with a reading disability, and so I still have some issues, especially with spelling. So one of the things that you can do is you can screen people with what is called a Circle Plus ring. Now this ring, Circle Plus, this is the large side, but you can see that it has an expandable bottom, but also if you look at it, it's not round, it's actually square on the sides. And the advantage to that is it doesn't rotate around your finger. Okay. And you put it on any finger that fits, whatever it might be. And there's small, large, extra large that we can find for every person. Now you can see the pad on the bottom. There's a little brass part here, so you can do your blood pressure and pulse rate here. Okay, and then also in the night it'll actually measure HRV and what is called the oxygen desaturation index. This is a medical device, unlike an Oura ring. This is actual medical device, and it does much better job. It actually measures about almost 100 things per second, 100 data points per second.
Yeah, it's a simple ring.
This will not last all day long like an Oura ring will, because they take readings every 10 to 15 minutes. This one takes a reading every second. So it is truly a ring that you can use to help with screening. Now, what I would do is send this home with the patient, have them use it a couple of nights, and look at their stats and see if you have abnormal readings. If you do, it doesn't diagnose yet. This just is a screening tool. And you can also use it to titrate treatment. In other words, if you do something, and then you could monitor them each night to see if whatever you're doing is working. And you can actually have them adjust things to see if you got it working. So this gives you true data to know if you're making progress. Now, if these are abnormal, then I have them go and get an actual sleep study, which is a different ring. We have another one. And one is called a night owl. It fits on the tip of your finger. You don't have to go to a hospital. And the other one is something like this with a lot of dials and readings on the top. And it will give you an actual sleep study that a physician can do a diagnosis with. I, as a dentist, no one can do a diagnosis other than a medical practitioner with a sleep degree. That's just the way the rules are written, and I'm fine for that because I don't want to treat.
Neither do
I. I do not want to treat the 100 sleep disorders that are out there. I'll stick with what I know and what I can do, and that's the vast majority of people that have obstructive sleep apnea.
Yeah, and there's many solutions to that, which is great. So that's how we find it. That's how we diagnose it. That's how we get a better reading of it. And the thing I love about data and what you've created with the Circle Plus is as you're going through therapy or correction, you can keep monitoring the data to ensure that progress is being made. Permanent change is being made. Yeah. That's where I think medicine misses this, is there is no follow-up.
There isn't any follow-up. I've seen hundreds of patients who have been put on CPAP. They've stopped wearing it in 6 months, and they're never followed up with. I don't know how they get away with that. I really don't know how. And by the way, this ring, we're working with the company right now on their back office data to do cloud recordings automatically with the patient. And then there's much more data there. And then we're going to be able to do a remote patient monitoring. So all doctors like yourself can do remote patient monitoring, and we'll have it AI monitored so that those who have higher risk scores are highlighted on your report daily. and you can see who is in the extreme red category that you may need to follow up with because they're having problems, and those who are completely safe in the green category that you can just monitor on an occasional basis. That would greatly drop your need and time-intensive monitoring program by having that sourced in such a way. And we're working on that right now to have that ready for everybody.
Great. Yeah. Any providers you for our listeners that you would recommend, not particular or by name, but maybe by industry, that parents can bring their kids to get? Who should, if you're worried about sleep, where should you go first? Who should you talk to? I mean, medicine, of course, talk to your doctor. But we had success with Myofunctional, which was very different. It was a different provider. It was done over Zoom. She was in Colorado. Showed us the exercises on a screen. There's devices and chewies and styrofoams and all this stuff. But who do you recommend?
I do think that's a great idea. I think that having starting off with a myofunctional therapist or sleep language pathologist is a great way to start. They're very good at screening for tongue restrictions, tongue ties, and breathing issues. And they're becoming more and more sophisticated. And then they refer you out to the next person that ought to be seen. I love that idea. I think too, I work with dentists and many people that are being trained on my website called Sleep Balance Academy. And we educate these people, but you may look in your phone book for a dentist who actually advertises that they do sleep dentistry. And that would be a good way to start as well. Now, the thing about it is, if you go to a physician, many of them are changing now, and they're becoming more and more aware that oral sleep appliances that dentists make are a very good alternative. Many of them don't know anything about these ideas, these things yet. But if you go to a dentist, at least you'll get a choice between a CPAP and an oral sleep appliance, which is nice to have that option. So I would go and look for that. And then more and more chiropractors are now getting trained, and you may see chiropractors advertising that they have a sleep-oriented health practice. I think that's a really good thing to do. But look for those cues. I think that would help. And the other thing you can do is you can go to my website, onlinehomesleepstudy.com. You can order your own sleep study. You don't have to have it prescribed by a dentist or physician. You can actually order that on your own. And then you will get a diagnosis from the doctors that I work with, all 50 states. And then we will make recommendations on care. And we will help you find a practitioner that will work with you.
That is wonderful. There you go. That's what I was getting to. I knew you had a solution to this. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Downs. That's amazing. Our listeners will keep up and look into this. I know much more. That's a great eye-opening experience for sleep, and it's so important to our health, getting adequate sleep, not just the hours, but adequate sleep. I don't think people understand this. Not only is 4 hours not good enough, but just not getting into REM sleep, just not getting the right air cycle, oxygen. As a chiropractor, all I'm trying to do is work on posture and get people opened up and just so they can breathe at night. So I get it. It's absolutely wonderful to help people, but it's tough to get them the right help. And especially for you, they're calling you from all over the country.
Well, Doctor, I think that what you've just said is so important. If you read, there's a couple of books I'd recommend. Breathe by Dr. Walker. He's a PhD from Stanford. That is, Why We Sleep. That's what that's called. Why We Sleep by Dr. Walker. That is a really important book. It talks about getting 8 hours of sleep per night. We're chronically not getting enough sleep.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
Another one's called Jaws. I can't remember the name of the authors, but Jaws is a very good one. And then the last one is Breathe. I think it's called Breathe by James Nestor. Very excellent about nasal breathing. It's how important it is.
Nestor.
If your child is breathing open mouth, So while sleeping, in other words, their mouth is open, you've got a problem. There's no doubt about it.
Yes. For those parents listening, that's the first sign of like, oh, we should probably go get this checked.
Yeah.
Naturally, you keep your mouth closed, tongue goes to the roof of the mouth. Most of the air is breathed in through the nose. Yes.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's such good information, Doctor. I appreciate that.
No, I appreciate you. Thank you for your time. This is fantastic. I'll make sure I put all the links to your websites and everything in the bio so that people can find you. And for sure, I appreciate your time. This is so great.
All right. Thank you. And just let them know also that particular nasal spray has just been put on my website. So that's just a new development, and that'll be
right. Touch on that for a second. So the nasal spray is a great thing for.
This is an all natural product that cleans your nose daily, and it has a swing arm on it, so you can but it's made with hypochlorous acid. Now this is the same material that your white blood cells make, hypochlorous acid. So it's all natural. So it's just hypochlorous and water. There's no salt in this because most people make this with electrolysis. We do not. We have a proprietary method for making this. And you clean your nose 3 times a day with this. It will help keep the airway open. And it's one of the things I think will help with respiratory infections as well, although I can't make FDA claims in that area.
No, but that makes sense. Keeping a clean airway makes sense. Makes perfect sense.
Right.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Living a Full Life podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. That helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.